Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 179 of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts podcast network, the DAP network, if you will. Give me DAP. There we go. And we will. So we are here tonight. I am back for the first time in a couple episodes with don't tell Andrew, but my favorite co-host, Tommy.
Hey.
Tommy, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing so good tonight. How you doing tonight, Rocky?
Doing pretty good. Happy to have a great guest here with us tonight, Nate Polvogt. Nate, why don't you tell everybody who you are, where they can find you, your Twitter handle, all that good stuff.
What's up, everybody? I'm Nate Polvogt. I have been all over the place. You've probably seen me at places like Fantasy Pros and Razzball and In Between Media. You can find me on Twitter at Nate Polvogt, just like my name is spelled. This is always confusing. Wait, good job. There, right there. And we've got a new company, Optimus Fantasy. You might have seen us kicking around the YouTube streets here recently. We have a website on the way July 1st. It is going to have a premium tool subscription set. We're hoping is ready July 1st. If not, it will be ready soon after. And other than that, I'm just getting screwed in trades repeatedly. So, the dynasty life, right?
Okay, and for anybody tuning in, we are streaming live on Twitter. We are offering a chance at an SFB spot tonight.
Yes.
Hoping we got some people in the chat. Just ask any kind of. I titled the YouTube "Ask Us Anything." So I was thinking dynasty questions, but if you want to go in other directions, that's fine too. And I hosted a Trade Addicts with Tommy recently, where he did 5 minutes on drywall. So we'll try and answer any questions people might have. Hopefully, we get some questions in the chat. But before we get into that, what are we going to say? The news and notes. We usually have a little news and notes section. Don't think there's that much worth bringing up. But Tommy, I know you had at least one thing, and Nate, if there's anything else you can think of, but I know, Tommy, one thing you wanted to mention before we get into the questions.
This is a glorious day, Jaguars Nation, County of Duval. We signed our franchise quarterback. We didn't just sign him. We signed him to really the biggest deal on an annual basis of anyone in the NFL all the way through 2030. So we've got him locked up. There's no more rumors about us moving to London. We've got a stadium deal in place. We've got our franchise quarterback. It's all finally falling into place, 30 years in the making. So I'm so happy as a season ticket holder that those pillars are there and that all I have to do is be sad every Sunday when we inevitably lose. Everything else is in place, though. Nate, what did you think about this contract? Is this a warranted deal, or is this just the next quarterback setting the market?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's parts of it that are warranted. There's parts of me that can be convinced that it's warranted, I guess would be a better way to say it. Looking at it from a fantasy perspective, QB 23, QB 8, QB 13. But we know how hurt he was last season. And it was only his second season in the Doug Peterson system. And you have to give him a pass for that 2021 season with Urban Meyer, right? Like you can't even really, that was almost like another college year. Not really fair. Yet he threw the ball 602 times that season. So got some good reps in a shitty offense at least. But here's what I'll say. He set the market for quarterback. This was the next big contract to come. It had to happen. I'm glad it was Trevor Lawrence. He earned it just having to play one season under Urban Meyer, in my opinion. But this is an offense that is set up to succeed. If they can get Travis Etienne going, if they can get Tank Bigsby more involved in this offense, I'm really excited to see what Brian Thomas Jr. can do. Another season of Evan Ingram. I think Christian Kirk's going to be a big part of this offense. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm a little afraid that he got the money and he's going to slack a little bit, but I don't think that's really in Trevor Lawrence's character. So I expect big things. I think he's somewhere fantasy-wise, probably slot him in somewhere between QB 12 and QB 8. But I think from a franchise perspective, it's a big deal for Jacksonville to have some stability moving forward. So I like it from a football perspective. I think it's great. From a fantasy perspective, it doesn't really tip the needle for me, I guess.
Yeah, that's my take on it too. It's a lot more important from a real life football perspective. Jeff in the chat, Tommy says not a dynasty question, but so important. No, not this one. Sorry, Jay. How much does the contract come out to in the dollars to turnover metric, Tommy?
That doesn't count as your question to get entered in the Scott Fishbowl, Jay. Not amused, sir.
But as Tommy said, we are giving away a Scott Fishbowl spot tonight, SFB 14. Want to thank Scott for giving us the ability to do this. And basically how it's going to work is we've been getting them already here in the chat. We got, I think, about 4 or 5 questions already. Basically get in the chat. Hopefully if you haven't already heard and you spotted us on Twitter, get in the chat now, ask us questions. At the end, we will run a 100-yard dash with anybody who asked a question. And we did put in the tweet. Please give us a follow as well. And you can get that spot. So it's going to be chance, but just you got to ask a question, and that's all you got to do. Just ask a question. It can be about Dynasty. It can be about anything except about dollars to turnovers when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, apparently. And one thing I do want to remind everyone that might be listening or watching is that Scott always makes it a point to say this. Make sure you are signed up if you're trying to get in already. He's, if we tell him this person won our contest and they're not signed up, you probably won't get in. So make sure you are signed up on the site. There's thousands upon thousands. So I'm assuming all you people asking questions are signed up, but I just wanted to throw that out there. First
32 who ask a question. We're limiting this to a 32-person 100-yard rush.
And hopefully we get 32. We got about 6 so far, so we're on our way. But I know you had gotten one that was submitted before we even started time. You want to read that question?
Yeah, that was from the aforementioned Jay. I'll forgive you because this is a great question. So the question here is, how do you adjust valuing backup quarterbacks in best ball versus lineup? In a best ball league, Jay picked up Brissett and Stidham for nothing in hopes to flip them if they're starting in week 1. They also have Brissett in a lineup league to do the same thing. So, Nate, how do you approach this type of scenario at the quarterback position?
I'm weird about late round quarterbacks. I usually stay away from them. That's the best thing I can say here. Now, okay, so however, if we're talking best ball, I'm okay with that. Taking a stab on a guy like Stidham, if it's a best ball league with trades where there's a chance you could move these guys if it looks like they might start, okay, that's fine. I'm usually, though, not a proponent of taking guys with the idea that I'm taking this guy to hoard them for a trade, because 9 times out of 10, and I think we've all had this happen to us where we tried it, you end up stuck with the player, and then you've wasted a roster spot or a draft pick on a guy you can't do anything with. So I would just caution you, if that's your move, be aware that if you get stuck with those guys, it's a real possibility. So be prepared.
Yeah, I don't play much best ball, Dynasty best ball especially, and I actually don't really play much redraft best ball. So I'm not the best person to answer this question, but in general, I actually don't. I do kind of, well, especially in Dynasty. I do like rostering backup quarterbacks, just because in most of my leagues you have so many roster spots. I think that's the case with a lot of leagues. It's 25 is like on the low end in most of my leagues. It's a lot more 28s, 30s, 32s. Might as well have them. The 50 some quarter. If you look historically, 50 some quarterbacks start every year. You can throw them in if you need them, or like you said, you often don't get a great trade for it. But I've seen I've seen Jake Brownings go for seconds for desperate, teams that are trying to make a playoff run and lost Joe Burrow or something like that. So more so in Dynasty is how I'm thinking about it. Just because, like I said, I don't play a lot of best ball. But any thoughts on this one, Tom, before we move to the next question?
Just a quick follow-up from Jay here. They were able to send Brissett and Javon Baker to the May manager, so they cleared up the roster spot, and they got Jameson Williams back. Does that change y'all's opinion at all?
I'm not super high on Jameson, but I'd rather have them than Javon Baker and Jacoby Brissett. So I'd rather take that flyer. And then, I'm not expecting a lot, even if Jacoby Brissett gets in there. So
yeah, totally agree.
I like Javon Baker maybe a little bit more than you do, it sounds like. But I like Jameson Williams more still. So, yeah, that works for me. If you get Jameson Williams back, there's risk involved in that too. But it's higher reward if it pays off.
Yeah, great question.
Okay, I'll go to another one here. Well, I might kind of hop around. This one, in I don't know Dumbly. I don't know how to say that, but in Dynasty, do you value picks more or players? I mean, in general, I think you have to always value players more, but it also often kind of depends on what stage of what state your team is in. Basically, I mean, it's very team dependent. I mean, Tommy, why don't you chime in on this?
Yeah. So picks are a means to an end, right? I don't think of them as a commodity that I will eventually use to select a player. I think about what I can cash them in for. So I love picks until they reach a certain value, and then I can combine them and buy something that actually matters. The point is you have to remain focused on what matters. And that's the top handful of quarterbacks, the top handful of tight ends, and really the first 16 or so wide receivers. Those are the assets that everyone covets. They're usually fairly repeatable profiles, and they're players that get a lot of points in your lineup. So I like those players, but if I can cash out almost literally anything else for picks of equivalent value, that's what I want to do. I know there's so many ways to navigate this, though. The point is to have some kind of balance between the two. You don't want to be completely lacking on one side or the other. Do you agree, Nate?
I do. When I look at a question like this, which do you value more? It really depends about context, right? Because as I'm stepping into a rookie draft, I probably value those picks a little bit more at that point. But at this point in the season, I've walked through rookie drafts. I've got picks for next year. Now I want known assets. So I'm willing to maybe deal those picks for a little bit less value than I might have leading into a rookie draft. If that makes sense. I like a guy who I've seen produce before versus a pick that might be it might be Trevor Lawrence, it might be Jamarcus Russell. We won't know when we make that pick. So from that standpoint, I guess I value the player a little bit more in most situations.
Yeah, and I'm the type of person, and I know my Traded X co-host Russ is often the same way. I'm often pickless by the time rookie drafts roll around. I'm the kind of guy who does tend to send out picks to try and get win now pieces or even just elite pieces. I wouldn't even say win now. Like I'll throw multiple first at a younger player that's already producing or something like that. So I'm definitely a player over picks kind of guy. But let me get to the next question here that comes from, this is the first one I think that was asked in the chat. Matthew Crory, who are you guys higher on at this point for Dynasty? Diggs, Stephon Diggs, or Devontae Adams? What about you, Nate?
That's tough because I'm not really very high on either one of them. But if I had to pick one over the other, I'm going to go Diggs because of the quarterback situation. Whereas that he's got C.J. Stroud, and the team's likely looking at him as a wide receiver one, at least to start the season. Devontae Adams is the wide receiver one in Las Vegas, but it's Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew. So, I mean, for me, it has to be Diggs. It's ugly. I'd prefer neither, but I'll say Diggs.
Tommy?
Yeah, it's a tough question, and you have to essentially explore within the same profile and pick a name. I think that if I had to choose the profile that's going to age more gracefully, the player who will, is Devontae Adams, in my opinion. His route running is just exquisite. He's going to have a role as long as he wants to play, similar to what I think Larry Fitzgerald was able to do, where if you put him in the right situation, he could still be a low-end wide receiver 2 into his mid to late 30s. The question is, how long do either of these players want to play, and what situations will they eventually end up in? I kind of like both of them because the market hates them, and they seem to be very cheap production that I can get where I don't have to spend multiple firsts to get one of these young guys, and I may be able to match a lot of them, except for the very elite few. What do you think, Rocky?
I'm kind of with Nate here, and then I lean Diggs mainly for the reason that he said he's tied to CJ Stroud. How long will he be there? I guess we'll see. But right now, at least I know he has CJ. As long as he's in Houston, the CJ Stroud will be the quarterback. And Devontae Adams, who the hell knows? I'm not thrilled, like you said, with Minshew and O'Connell. Maybe he moves on from there, even maybe this season, for all we know. maybe gets traded during the season. I could see that happening as the Raiders, fall out of contention or something like that. But they're both older guys. Both, like as Tommy said, are kind of decent buys because you can get them cheap, and I expect good production for both of them. You can probably get them both, either of them for a second or two at most. And but I would lean Diggs. Not that it matters that much. He is a year younger too, but they're both 30 plus, so it's not a huge deal breaker there. But that does factor in a little bit, especially when you add in the quarterback aspect. So I would lean Diggs. But let's get to our next question. Got a bunch coming in here now. It would be from, I think, did he ask another question? He did, but I'm gonna just mention this since he asked. Not a dynasty question, but so important. Will you guys have a segment in the Podathon? I don't believe we will. Andrew, our third host, is kind of the guy who would do something more like that. I'm not big on getting us booked on something like that. I don't know if you are, Tommy. I don't know if you're on the Podathon with your other show. For all I know, maybe you are. But I'm not big with doing the behind-the-scenes booking. As far as I know, we are not. Is that correct? As far as you know?
We are not. I'm going to be trying to jump on with Billy Beeman over at Dynasty Underdog. We've been DMing, trying to get a spot. It's such a cool event, though. Like, just watching it. I know that even in the years where I haven't been on, I've streamed, multiple hours of it because it's so cool to see not only a good cause, but to see people being more than the dynasty analyst or the fantasy analyst. You get to know people a little bit more. It's so low pressure, and it's such a fun event. There's a lot of energy around it, and I have nothing but respect for folks who can pull something of that caliber off. Nate, are you going to be on it?
I am. I don't know when yet. We're still waiting to hear back. We're going to have some Optimus representation. This will actually be my 4th year on the Scott Fishbowl Podathon. This is a fun story about the Podathon, just to speak to how freaking awesome this event is. The first time I was on, I wasn't scheduled, nor was my wife, Jen. And the reason we got on was because of her. We were in Mexico. It was our first night in Mexico. And we'd been watching the Podathon all day on the big screen in our Airbnb in Mexico. And out of nowhere, Linda Lindellians on Twitter and Steph Smalls reached out to Jen at like 11:30 at night saying, "Hey, do you want to hop on with us at midnight? We're doing a girls segment. We'd love to have you come on." She hopped on with them. Then they asked me to come on at 1 a.m. Totally unexpected. We're in Mexico, had been drinking tequila all day. Got to hop on the Podathon, and then we just keep getting asked back for who knows why. But I got to say, it's one of the coolest things I get to be a part of every year. It is so much fun. And like, guys, what an awesome cause. Just in general, everything that Scott Fishbowl does.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I did it once. I believe it was a Junkies thing. I think it might have been me and Andrew. It might even been me and Dustin. I can't remember. It was a few years ago now. That Dustin will be back when we very first started the pod. But yeah, it's a great time if you can get on there. I just haven't. I know they're trying to accommodate as many people as possible. I'm guessing if we had really tried, we probably could have squeezed in there. It's just. I'm too lazy, and Andrew didn't do it. So.
Well, see, so this is all Andrew's fault. Damn it!
We always blame the host who's not here. So,
of course.
But yeah, the Podathon is great. I think it's going at 48 hours this year too, which is nuts. I know Russ, my Trade Addicts co-host, is doing a lot of it. Not all 48 hours, but he is going to be hosting multiple days, I believe. So keep a lookout for him too. Okay, so next question comes from Dubs Win. What draft position do you like most from SFB 14 in SFB 14, especially with third round reversal? I'll start. I've been in the last 5 or so, and since they started the third round reversal, I tend to like to be at the end. I like that. I think I've had 11 the last 2 years, getting the late pick and then the early second, and then you get an early third because of the third round reversal. So I tend to like to do it that way and get 3 picks early. But what about you, Tommy?
I totally agree. And this is me picking from the 101 for the second year in a row and probably missing the playoffs again. Yeah, I think being towards the end makes a ton of sense, especially with the scoring settings. What I'm going to try to do at the 101 this year, though, is keep an eye out on which star wide receivers are going to be taking some form of kick return role, hopefully Tyreek Hill, and probably leaning into that type of build. I know tight end and quarterback, especially rushing quarterback, seem to have a lot of steam right now, but I think that would be a really strong counter build from that position. Nate, where are you picking from?
I normally, my first year, I was a 3. I wanted to be early, wanted to see if I could get value at those early picks. After that, that sucked. Picking from the 3 slot, picking that early with the third round reversal, it just really, you feel like you get screwed out of a pick almost. This year, I'm going 12. Did my first mock on Monday, and I gotta say, I freaking love it. Being on the turn there at the end of the first round, heading into the second round, and then it kicks right back to you. I loved it. I will be at 12, I think, from now on. I'm not going to make the playoffs still, but it allowed me to. What I liked about it was being able to go quarterback, tight end, wide receiver, pretty much 1, 2, 3 very quickly and get value out of those positions in what's a very heavy PPR scoring, especially on the tight end side. So.
Okay, so that's basically where we're at. So get those late spots if you can, I guess. Depending, whoever gets to wins this spot, I guess we're saying we all kind of like the end of the first there. But another SFB question from I'm going to probably butcher this name too. Vitor Soma, SFB ADP wise, CJ Stroud is being drafted as QB4. And Jordan Love being drafted as QB10, despite the fact that Love had more yards and TDs last season. Why do you think that's happening? Nate, I'll let you start on this one.
Well, it's pretty simple. Look at the offense that CJ Stroud is in, and he did that his rookie season. Jordan Love is a guy who's had 4 years to sit behind other quarterbacks, acclimate to the NFL. We may see Jordan Love's probably at his ceiling, right? Like realistically, we're not going to see a lot of additional progression from him. Maybe a little. Maybe we'll get a little bump from Love. But what we saw out of CJ Stroud last season was just the beginning. And then you add another receiver and a considerably better running back than Devin Singletary. I think what's getting lost in all this is they got him Joe Mixon, who you can argue about his efficiency as a runner, but he still gets the job done. And last season was more efficient than he's been in his entire career. There's more there for Stroud. I would be I've seen him go as high as QB3 in some Scott Fishbowl mocks. But I've also seen Jordan Love going as high as QB6 or 7 in some Scott Fishbowl mocks. So, but that's the way it should be. Stroud should be ahead of Jordan Love.
You agree, Tommy?
I totally disagree. I don't even want either of these quarterbacks. I think they're both entirely overvalued in this format. This is a counter format to a lot of typical builds, especially in redraft. The issue I have is opportunity cost. The other, especially elite tight ends that I could grab at that position really matter, and kick return yards matter so much. I think what's going to happen is we're going to get more clarity later into this non-point scoring season about who will be fielding kicks, and those big play kick returns are really, really going to matter. I think quarterbacks should be devalued a little bit more than it is in this format.
Interesting.
So I don't think I would. I'm going to try not to draft a quarterback in the first 2 rounds. I'll just leave it there. It might be a disaster because my teams usually are in Scott Fishbowl. Rocky, what do you think about their ADPs in this format? Is this something that I could see it in a traditional Dynasty league or even a traditional redraft Superflex league? Is this something you would do at their current ADP in Scott Fishbowl?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't been looking at the mocks, so I don't know where their overall ADP is. I think QB wise, I think this is about right in terms of where they are QB wise, QB4, QB10. Just because, as Nate said, I kind of trust the Houston offense more. But I do like Love. I could see him give me a little higher. I do think it's interesting. It's 1 point for 50 yards, I believe, this year, which devalues guys who throw him for more yardage and touchdowns. I don't know that necessarily favors one of these guys over the other. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm pretty sure Stroud threw for more yards last year. But yeah, so I don't know what their touchdown numbers are, but off the top of my head. But I would think that would favor guys that score touchdowns, obviously, more than guys who put up big passing yards. And I would expect Stroud to actually have more. So I could see them being a little closer. And I'm been a bigger believer in Love than most, I think, as well. So, but I'm with you, Tommy, actually, in that I kind of think, I mean, we know what I do anyway. So I'm not a guy necessarily going to draft the elite quarterbacks to start off anyway, whether it's Dynasty or redraft in Superflex. But I think I'm even more inclined to wait with the passing yards kind of nerfing the scoring a little bit this year. And like you said, that return yardage is going to be huge. The tight end premium with the first downs you get for tight ends, and plus the reception premium. I really like going elite tight ends early in SFB. It's been similar in past years with the premium that Scott gives them. So I tend to lean to, although I will also say, don't necessarily listen to me. I did make the playoffs last year. I did not the previous 2 years. So I might not be the best guy to give advice on SFB. My first year though, SFB 9 was my first year, and I did make the finals that year. Total
nice, dude.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've never even made the playoffs, but Jen has made the playoffs all but 1 year. So
yeah.
I
made those finals and then did not make the playoffs again until this past year. So,
guys, just a quick note on our CJ Stroud and Jordan Love conversation. CJ Stroud in 2023, 4,108 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns. Jordan Love, 4,159 yards passing, 32 passing touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns. So he had exactly 10 more total touchdowns than CJ Stroud and beat him by just over 100 yards passing.
And I'm trying to remember, did Stroud miss a couple games?
He did,
right?
Yep.
Stroud missed 2 games at the end of the season. He missed weeks 15 and 16. Jordan Love did not miss a game. He only missed a handful of snaps all season.
Only 2 games, so it's still pretty close. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I could see them being closer than they are. Maybe one's overrated or one's underrated. I could see them being a little closer than they are. Like I said, I'm higher in Love than most, but I doubt, like Tommy said, I end up drafting either because I'm probably going elsewhere in those first picks, and then I'll get me a Kirk Cousins or somebody later.
Me too.
Okay, so our next question comes from a Puff Pass Kick. And I did say at the top, ask us anything. So he says, I'm going to take this in a different direction regarding AMA. Which is the better Sylvester Stallone 80s movie, Cobra or Over the Top? Now, I'll answer first because I got to admit, I've never seen Cobra. So I have to say Over the Top. But Over the Top was a great, classic campy ass movie that was very not really good, but it was fun. So I'll go with Over the Top because I have not seen Cobra. But if either of you have seen both, feel free to chime in.
I've seen neither, so I'm going to go with Cliffhanger.
There you go. I should say it's actually Rocky. So
yeah, right.
That's not 80s though. I think he said 80s movie, 80s Stallone movie. So yeah.
Rocky 3 was
4.
80s.
Yeah, Rocky 4. If he dies, he dies. But Tommy, have you seen either of them?
Over the Top is one of my favorite campy movies. Unfortunately, I haven't seen the other, but I think that Stallone movies from that era, they hold up pretty well because they were always meant to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of his own stunts. And I think that if you wanted to have a horrible movie marathon, you could do so much worse than Sly Stallone.
So much worse.
Exactly. Also, another great, I think this is 80s. I don't think it got in tonight. Tango and Cash, another great Stallone movie with Kurt Russell.
That was like 88, 89, I think. Yeah, so
I think so, late 80s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is another one that also came from somebody who already asked a question, but we're going to take everything that's in here. So, again, a Dumbly, I'm not sure how he wants that pronounced, but How many quarterbacks are you looking to roster in a Dynasty Superflex? Too many and you miss out on value at other positions. Too few and you're screwed. What's your sweet spot? This is such a common question here.
It is a beautiful question. I love it so much. It brings a smile to my face. You should roster the top 5 quarterbacks. You should aim to climb the charts, ignore whatever Rocky is about to say, and say the top of the quarterback position matters more than almost anything else in any setting. I am a huge proponent of just saying, like, value be damned. Go get the best quarterbacks. It's the most repeatable position. It's the highest scoring, most predictable. You know what you're getting when you get these elite quarterbacks. Get them early, get them often, trade for them when they're hurt, trade up, like do whatever you have to. You're not going to regret it, because if you ever want to trade them away, you can get incredible value. I'm going to not pass this to Rocky because I don't want to hear what he has to say about the quarterback position. I've heard it so many times and I disagree so much. I get that it works because I've played in leagues with you, man, and you've beaten me. Nate, why don't you be hopefully a middle ground and teach me why my strategy is wrong?
Okay, so I roster, like you, as many quarterbacks as humanly possible, but I do it a little bit differently. So I get my top 2 guys, right? You've got in Superflex, you've got your 2 guys you know you're going to want to start most every week unless there's a bye. But then I always try and have, in deeper leagues, both of those guys backups. However I can figure out to get both of their backups. And then I like to find a guy like, I don't know, like a Gardner Minshew, Carson Wentz, one of these guys where you feel like in the offseason you can get them for cheap. Maybe they found a team, maybe they didn't, but you just know somehow, some way they're going to fall into starting 4 or 5 games next season, right? And if they start those games early enough and they play well, you just might have a third starting quarterback on your hands. Doesn't play out halfway through the season, I'm going to drop that guy. Then I'll probably move on to the next guy who, Josh Dobbs was a guy last season that I happened to have rostered in a handful of leagues. Just as like, I don't know. I mean, there's a chance this dude could end up somewhere where he starts for like a handful of games, and it saved my ass in a couple of leagues. So, like, I love having those like top guys that you know you're going to start every week, but then having those outlier guys that they could step up and provide some value. Say you had Joe Burrow, but you couldn't get a hold of Jake Browning, but then you had Josh Dobbs. Fantasy season semi-saved. So that's my strategy.
Okay, so in terms of the number, I'm generally, in terms of starting quarterbacks, it's usually 3 for me, in part because of what Tommy's not going to like about what I'm going to say, which is that I don't go for the high-end guys. So I like to have 3, which is, I think, a fairly common answer that people like to have 3 anyway. But because I don't know, because I don't necessarily always have guys that I'm automatically starting no matter what. I want at least 3. I also don't mind 2 if I feel good about them. Like pre-injury, Cousins to me was always a starter, even if he was Dynasty QB 17 or whatever. To me, he was always a guy who was going to be a QB, low-end QB1. And if I have, say, like him and like a Tua, I'm fine with that, even if I don't have a third, because I'd be okay starting those 2 guys every week. I'm not as nervous about only having 2 as some people are. I will say, and we kind of talked about it earlier, and then Nate mentioned it when he answered the question, I do like to have backup, not even just my own guys' backups. I one thing I often tend to do, even if they stink, I tend to roster backups on good teams if I can get them. Just good offense. Like I don't think I ever started them, or if I did, it was like once or twice. But I know I had Blaine Gabbert on my team for a lot of teams for multiple years, because he was Mahomes' backup, and guys like that. And I'm trying to think. Jake Browning is a guy I had in a couple places because he was Burrow's backup, and that was a good offense. So that did end up working out. So I like to roster a decent amount of backup quarterbacks to try and capitalize on, like Nate said, maybe you get to use them, maybe you get to flip them, whatever it is. So overall, I'd say I prefer 3 starting quarterbacks, and then probably I'll have like 3 to 4 backups on my team. And again, this is usually with deep rosters. If you only have 25, I'm not rostering 7 quarterbacks. But if I have like a 32-man roster, I'm probably rostering like 6 or 7. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Okay, next question from Dubs Win. Will the Winter Whites still look white in Minnesota? I guess that's a reference to their new uniforms. With Darnold at QB, or will they look like he is back in green running for his life? I tend to think the latter. I'm not even sure how good Minnesota's offensive line is. I just think Darnold's got happy feet, and we're going to see it as usual this year. But Nate, what do you think? I'm not here. Yeah, I think you're muted or something's going on here.
Do you guys really think Sam Darnold's going to start?
Nope.
I think he may start in September. JJ McCarthy was always a guy that a lot of people didn't think would necessarily start right off the bat.
I didn't think he was going to go in the top 20 picks, but here we are. Right?
I'm not going to be surprised. I feel like Darnold may start September, and then we'll see what happens. But yeah,
look. If Darnold starts September, it concerns me that maybe Minnesota's looking at it like, uh-oh. Because I don't see any reason why if you took McCarthy with the 11th pick, he's this guy you've been salivating over. Why are you starting Sam Darnold over him week 1? If this guy's pro-ready coming out of Michigan and he's what Jim Harbaugh said he was, why are you starting Sam Darnold? That would, for me, red flags as a Minnesota fan and as a McCarthy manager. I'd be very concerned if he's not starting week 1.
Is that how you feel, Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, this is an era of get the quarterback in and figure out if they're any good. If they're not, get them out the next year and draft another one. I get there was a heavy investment, but like we don't have any real affiliation to quarterbacks anymore, especially rookie quarterbacks, because the salary wage scale has changed dramatically. What you're debating is in 4 years, do I have to pay $250, $300, $400 million to this guy? I'm not going to give this guy a gap year. I need to see, does he have it or not?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think that's enough time spent on Sam Darnold. And maybe this next guy as well, we won't need to talk about too much. This is from San Fran Psych. Did the question get asked about how big Taysom Hill will be for fantasy and being a sleeper? Is Taysom Hill even still a thing?
I mean, technically, he still exists in the NFL with New Orleans, I think. Right?
He's getting a ton of hype right now. Yeah.
Do we still think we're going to have Taysom Hill games? Is that still happening? I don't think we had that many last year, did we?
We had exactly 1, 2.5 to 3. Oh, wow. We had way too many Taysom Hill games. He had a stretch. So he had a stretch week 6. He had 12 points. Then he had 20 against Jacksonville, 27 against Indy, 28 against Chicago. Now, to be fair, this is very skewed because this is my Chaos League, which our scoring is just as whack as it gets.
Yeah.
But still, like from a standpoint of he scored a lot of points, probably he had about 6-7 weeks. He was tight end 10.
I kind of think he's going to be a thing with the way that offense is built. There's just a lack of options there. I don't know who they're going to throw to.
It's true.
I mean, didn't they have an injury at wide receiver? Was Rashid Shaheed injured and Jawan Johnson was injured?
Jawan Johnson.
It was Jawan Johnson just went down, but they think he's going to be ready for the season. But no, you're right. And plus, look, who's their quarterback?
Yeah.
Derek Carr.
Yeah.
And I have slid Chris Olave down my dynasty rankings all the way into the 20s because of Derek Carr. And because there's no solid out for Chris Olave in this offense right now. And look, Dennis Allen's the head coach. This team doesn't seem like they want to move on from him. So whatever the Benson family is doing is ridiculous, but okay. And then if you're just going to ride Derek Carr, I know exactly what we're going to get, an offense that does not cater to Chris Olave. But Taysom Hill will probably be, I bet you he finishes as a top 12 tight end this year.
I will say I was looking at Trade Addicts scoring, which is closer to normal scoring. And Taysom Taysom had a 3-game stretch where he scored between 16.8 and 22.9. And that's a tight end premium league. Outside of that, he did very little. So I guess we'll see. Like you said, I mean, Juwan Johnson going down, maybe that affects things. But like you said, he could be back early still. But I guess there's not a lot of weapons there. I don't have any interest in Taysom Hill. I'm over the Taysom Hill thing. So I don't see much there. And again, the other thing is too, you can never predict when those games are going to happen. So unless you have them in best ball, like one of you,
right.
I would never be wanting to stick him in my starting lineup because you're just as likely to get like a 3 as a 20 or something like that. So okay. Puff Pass Kick again asks Tommy, how many Snoop Connor shares you got? He's this year's Demetric Felton.
Am I wrong in trading for Tank Bigsby? I'm ignoring your question, Puff Pass Kick. Tank Bigsby, decent draft capital. The coaches are interested in expanding his role, easing ETN's workload. I don't know. This kind of feels like the year of the 3rd and 4th round NFL drafted running backs that didn't hit. I kind of like them. They're really cheap right now. Nate, are you buying any of these guys? I'm talking like Kendre Miller, Roschon Johnson, Tank Bigsby. Certainly not Snoop Connor from a couple of years ago.
Well, no, definitely not Snoop Connor. I want to say yes about Roschon. I was really hot on Roschon last season coming in. I thought he was being undervalued because he sat behind Bijan at Texas. I have changed my tune on that. I am staying away from Roschon Johnson. Kendre Miller, on the other hand, I see a role for him in this offense because, like we just talked about, Dennis Allen is an idiot. Derek Carr is their quarterback. I think Kendre Miller becomes that 1B to Kamara's 1A, where Kamara resumes a ton of the passing work. We don't see him carrying the ball much. Kendre Miller is healthy. We're going to see him run the ball a lot more. Now, to be fair, though, measured expectations, that means he's like a mid-level RB2, right? He's not, if that's like his ceiling for Kendre Miller. However, at value, I'm buying that because I could use some flex running backs, right? Couldn't we all? And I think that at this point, that's what you need to be looking at with Kendre Miller. Same with Tank. Now, I think that Tank's ceiling is a little bit higher. I can see him edging into that like mid-level RB2 range at his ceiling. If Etienne misses any time, if Etienne's inefficient, if Etienne makes some mistakes that piss Doug Peterson off, I can see Bigsby getting a bigger role. That said, I think realistically, he's probably a high-end RB3. But again, at value, I think you buy him at cost right now. I think it's worth it. I think he's a good guy you can plug in some weeks. And if he starts to take off, he becomes an RB2. You got him for RB3 price.
Yeah, I kind of agree with a lot of what Nate said. I think of those guys, I actually might lean Tank a little more. I did like Tank a little coming out, and I would rather just probably have the guy that if an injury happens, he's probably going to get a large share of the workload, and he's in a better offense than Kendre Miller would be, even if, say, Kamara went down or something like that. So I would lean that, and I do tend to roster a lot of backup running backs. I don't have much Snoop Connor, sorry, Puff Pass Kick, but I tend to target them a lot, especially in rookie drafts. So I have a lot of the backups that are third stringers in some cases being drafted this year. I have a lot of Bucky Irving and Will Shipley and Dylan Lobb and all those kind of guys. So that's basically what I'm looking for is opportunity in decent offenses or good offenses, I should say. And I think that's going to still be good, even with the loss of Calvin Ridley. I think, with Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk, Ingram, and if Tank can get a bigger role there, I think, say if ETN does get banged up, I kind of like his chances of doing well. So
can we hit on a name you just said real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Dylan Laube. I love Dylan Laube. Big Dylan Laube fan. In Dynasty, he's basically free. Go get you some Dylan Laube. Toss him on your taxi. There are two reasons why I say this. One, I watched him in person at the Senior Bowl. That dude works hard. He will find a spot on that Vegas team. He's got that Raiders vibe, that Raiders blood, that kind of like I'm determined asshole and I'm going to succeed type vibe. But number two, the lovely Princess of Darkness, Amy Trask. I saw her the other day talking about she really likes Dylan Lowby as a player. She thinks he's got that it to be someone who makes a difference for this Vegas team. So between those two things, go get him for free, guys. Toss him on your taxi squad. And this is coming from a lifelong Broncos fan. Go get that kid.
I do have so many shares, and I don't even know a lot about him. It's just based on situation. It's like it's Zamir White and Alexander Madison. Like, anything can happen there. It's not like he's got world beaters in front of him. So
right.
Who knows?
And I'll say this: he was by far the best route running back at the Senior Bowl. It wasn't even close. He was winning in contested catch situations as well against bigger corners and linebackers.
And that's what you like to hear. You want those pass catching running backs. I do want to just point out here, Jay in the chat says Tank Bigsby is a weird way to pronounce Dearness Johnson.
That's a good one.
I liked that. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to one after this. I want to do this one real quick because I don't think this will take long to answer. But from Jeff Sutrick, Hendon Hooker have any value? Not to me, especially with Goff being extended officially now. Yeah, I mean, I was never a big Hooker guy. Oh, God, that came out wrong. I was never a big Hendon Hooker guy. Regardless of where he went, but Goff it reminds me almost of like the Jalen Hurts thing. Not that he's as good as Jalen Hurts, Goff, but that it was like, okay, he's definitely going to be out of here eventually. They have the means. They're going to want to do something else, and especially from when they first got him, everyone thought he was just like a throw-in, and they always said he wasn't, but nobody believed him, and they thought they were just trying to get rid of Goff's contract because they're bringing in Stafford, and that's all that was about. And the Lions didn't actually have any interest in him. And Goff's always been kind of a bit underrated as a real life quarterback, but especially as a fantasy quarterback. Yeah, I don't see Hooker having any value. What about you, Nate?
I love Hendon Hooker, but they gave Goff the extension. And even though he's listed at number 2 on the depth chart ahead of Nate Sudfeld, I feel like right now, coming off of that knee injury a year and a half ago, where he's at in his development, even if Goff gets hurt, I don't think Hooker's the next guy up. I think it's going to be Nate Sudfeld. So if you're holding on to him, you can tax him for 2 seasons. He's probably worth the hold for 1 more year, but if you've got to put him on your active roster, I'd dump him right now. There's literally no reason to hold on to him at this point.
Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. The thing is, these quarterbacks go down with ACLs all the time. The question I would ask is, if Goff was gone, if he was Thanos for a year, what could we get out of Hooker? I kind of like the offense, right? If you're going to buy into an offense, that's not a bad one to take for free. Look at your roster construction. Is there a wide receiver that you can cut to pick up a Hendon Hooker? I think that Scott Connor has done a pretty good job with the any QB on a 2-deep strategy, sort of espousing the benefits of that. If you have extra roster spots, I don't mind holding him, especially like going into the next non-point scoring season. It's one of those lottery ticket players where maybe he gets cut and he finds a better home while waivers are locked,
Yeah, I can definitely see. Like you said, it is a good offense, and if you can get, like I said, I like backups on good offenses. I'm not a big fan. But if he were to start, like you said, if Goff were to go down, I'll give anybody a try if they're in a good offense like that. So, okay, next question from Matt Flowers. How do you make your decision on when to give up on players in Dynasty? I'm holding so many players where I can't get past, but if the starter gets injured. Speaking of which, so Tommy, how do you decide on that?
It depends on the position, right? I'm very willing to give up on wide receivers. I don't even really draft rookie wide receivers. I don't have many to give up on, but I am willing to cut the cord if I made the mistake on a Quentin Johnston, right? Like, I'm out. See ya, bye, whatever I can get. I will cut him so that you will spend all your fab or some significant portion of fab on him, and I'll take a 3rd or 4th string running back. Give me Louis Reese-Zammit instead of Quentin Johnston, right? So It depends on that. At tight end, I hold on to players for probably too long. Taysom Hill is a perfect example of that. Like, I don't know, maybe he falls into a good 3-week stretch and I can capture one of those starts. So I probably need to look in the mirror there and say, like, what am I doing at tight end? Why am I carrying so many of these guys that don't matter? At running back, you can never give up on a guy too early because you just wait for their opportunity to present. And it's like, all right, cool. This week is a Craig Reynolds week, and we're just going to start him instead of, I really wanted to start this RB1 that I was looking at coming into the season, Jonathan Taylor, but he's gone. Like he's injured. He's tore his ACL or whatever. So now it's time to start the backup running backs. You just have to have enough of them at volume. Snoop Connor, maybe. In order to have 24 48 starts, whatever your lineup looks like. Nate, what do you think about this though? How are you giving up on players? I want to ask you specifically about quarterback, a position I avoided.
So here's the way I look at it. On giving up on a player, the person I'm looking at replacing them with, is there any point in which the player I'm getting rid of could eclipse this other player's value? If the answer is no, then I'm fine getting rid of that player. And I do that with every single position. Wins over replacement. It's a dumb baseball stat that I've seen lots of arguments about over the last few days, which is too bad that I'm out of baseball analytics these days because I have some things to say about it. But from that standpoint, from a fantasy standpoint, I kind of look at it like that. Is this player worth holding on to? Is the person that I'm going to replace them with in my lineup going to consistently score more points? Is there any chance they ever take them over in fantasy rankings? If the answer is no, I'm done with them. And I've had to really force myself to do that because when I first got into it, I got these attachments like, but I drafted him. I don't want to get rid of him. I drafted him. He's mine. This is my team. You can't have him. But now it's very simple. Like if they're not going to return value and I have someone who's more valuable to replace them with, I'll get what I can or I'll cut them.
And I kind of agree with a lot of what you both said, especially as you broke it down by position, Tommy. I have a lot to add other than that. I am probably one of the worst people to answer this question. I had like Andrew Luck on my roster for 2 years after he retired, so on multiple rosters. So I don't like to give up on guys. I'm with you on the receivers though, especially like if I don't see a guy do it year one, I don't know if I'll go. I don't think I've gone so far as to cut Quentin Johnson anywhere, but I'm totally fine throwing him in, just get him off my roster into a deal or something like that. I don't see it happening. Like I said, year one and you show next to nothing, you're pretty much dead to me as a wide receiver. It's not never, but it rarely happens where those guys end up producing big time after that. So
Yep.
Even if it becomes something, it's not going to be probably something that makes a huge difference to your roster. Okay, I think as of right now, we only have one more question here, which actually is from a Dumley, I believe, because he said it's a play on his name, Adam Lee. So
Nice.
you let us know that in the chat. So and this one, I think, at least for me, is pretty easy. Olave or Pickens? Is anyone taking Pickens there?
No. No, thank you.
Really, Nate? You're that high on Pickens.
It's more of, and again, for me, Dynasty and a lot of these player values come down to situation because it's so important long term. I like Pickens' situation in Pittsburgh more than I like Olave's situation in New Orleans. It comes down to that they've got Russell Wilson, who I think has gotten a real bad rap. I think he's a much better quarterback than we've given him credit for, who's been in really, he's been on 2 really bad Denver teams since he got healthy after being injured in Seattle. And Arthur Smith made something of Ryan Tannehill, right? So given that, I think Pickens is on the better team. I think Pickens has the better upside, higher upside. Long term, I want Pickens over Olave. Are you guys going to take my fantasy football man card now or what? Is that what's happening?
No, I lean Olave. I need to see more from Pickens. I will say I do feel like Olave is a little overrated. I see him as a wide receiver too. Like I think that's where he's going to live for the rest of his career. And I think especially, I think still some people see him as a potential wide receiver 1. I don't see that. A fantasy wide receiver 1, I should say. He's been good. He's been in the 70 to 85 catch range each of his first 2 years. 1,000 and 1,100 yards. Not much in the way of touchdowns. So if he has like a big touchdown, if he gets an upgraded quarterback, then maybe that changes things. I mean, he's only scored 9 touchdowns in his career, though. So he's not a big touchdown guy. Again, that could change with a better quarterback, but I don't see him as a wide receiver one. I think, especially after this rookie year, I think a lot of people were viewing him that way, and I still think some people view him that way now. But I just don't see it. But I would still take him over Pickens just because the state of everything in Pittsburgh has me a little nervous. I do like that, he's kind of the wide receiver one there now, but Russell Wilson and Justin Fields don't inspire a ton of confidence in me. So
See,
I would.
As somebody who's a low key Steelers fan, this is the best I felt about this offense in a few years, man. Like I really have a lot of hope that this might be the year where we see this team actually win 9 games or 10 games.
Wow.
We might get to 10 games, guys.
Good luck with that. But Tommy, you said you're Olave over Pickens as well, right?
I mean, big time. It feels like there's untapped ceiling. I would rather have Olave over Garrett Wilson. I mean, we'll see.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big wow for me too.
They're not even close for me. The Pickens Olave conversation. I'm willing to be wrong. The thing is, I'm not going to pay to navigate between those tiers. I'm going to sit with whatever I've got because there's no point in paying between the two.
Why Olave over Wilson?
Because all of his underlying metrics are better. It's just been, they've both been in pretty difficult situations.
Yeah.
I'm going to lean on numbers because although I watch literally every single play of every single game, I'm not going to trust what my eyes say is the difference. I'm going to look at what the numbers say and try to remove myself and my biases and to navigate between markets. And so if I can get Olave plus with a Wilson, like I am absolutely willing to do that. I would do it straight up, but I don't have to because the market says I don't.
Yeah, and statistically they're pretty close, and Wilson doesn't score many touchdowns either. I guess I just give him more of a Jets pass than I give Olave a pass, even though Derek Carr is not a world beater either, but he hasn't been stuck with Zach Wilson either the last couple of years. So
right.
It'll be interesting, especially this year, to see what he does now if Rodgers can stay healthy the whole year, and if he's a reasonable facsimile of Aaron Rodgers of a few years ago.
Yeah.
Which may not be the case for all we know. So, but there was one last question, not a football question, but just Dubs Wynn asked, how long have you guys been together as a show? Great show, by the way. I believe it's now 4 years. I think we started, I think it was April of 2020. So right around COVID time. We've gone through a number of different hosts. I've been, I guess, the one constant here. So, but it's been a fun ride, and hopefully we're going to keep it going a while longer here. But yeah, I think 4 years, and it's gone into different, we've gone into little hiatuses. We've gone now recently to every other week. So it's been an up and down, but we try and do our best here, and I appreciate the compliment there. It's from Dubs Win. So that finishes out our questions that we received to this point. Anyway, I was gonna say, Tom, I don't know if you already have stuff up for the. Now Dubs throws another question in there. You drafted Carr or Rodgers first? I don't know. I assume this is a redraft question.
In redraft, I'm going to go Rodgers over Carr.
I think I would have to go Rodgers there if we're talking redraft. Just with Wilson. Mike Williams is not a bad little pickup if he can stay healthy too, which they also have. Jay says it's neither an option. But yeah, I think I like his weapons a little more than what they have in New Orleans. So I would lean Rodgers too. In Dynasty, I would probably be the same because I don't expect Carr to be super long term either. So I think his time might be coming to an end soon as a regular starter anyway. So I don't know that he's going to last that much longer than Rodgers. So I don't, even though Rodgers is like 40. So I don't think that makes much of a difference actually, even if we're talking dynasty.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Tommy, I don't know if you have the 100-yard rush. I was gonna we like to do our Dynasty Junkies Listener League updates sometimes. So I was gonna say if you don't have it quite ready yet, I could kind of talk about this one trade we've had in the last couple of weeks with Nate, or if you're ready to go, we could just run it now and then.
Yeah, so I've never done a 100-yard rush, but I've got all the names in, and I've got these 3 sprint types. I think we should leave this up to our guest, which sprint type we will have. I'm assuming they're different speeds or
Yeah, they are.
animations?
I've done tons of 100-yard rush, so
Nice.
You want to
Let's
show it
go.
up on the screen or?
Let's do it. As I frantically look to the present.
this
screen.
is how we choose our home league draft order every year.
Really
100-yard rush. Yeah.
cool. All right, so I think I've got it here. These are all folks who have been in the chat submitting questions. Brad, you're in here because you've been commenting as well. So do I hit this forward arrow? Is that what I do
Yep.
here?
Yeah,
Tap that guy.
it just mixes the placements up. Yep. There you
All
go.
right, here we go. Are we ready, everybody?
Okay, here we go. This is, I'm sure, going to make a scintillating for the listeners of the podcast, but
Perfect for audio. No, we're not giving higher luck. Come on now. Let's do this. Oh my gosh. All right, here we go.
Yeah, there's
Ready?
about a
3,
million settings.
yeah, there are a million settings, and this one's going to. We could have sped it up a little. These guys are probably going to go kind of slow. So,
Here we go.
Vitor, is that Vitor? Is that
Vitor's
the early
the
lead?
A Dumbly with Dubs win coming up from the rear. Matt Flowers up the sideline. Yeah, you're right. This is very slow up to the 30-yard line.
Yeah, there's a way to speed it up. That's
Yeah.
yeah. I was telling Tommy before the show. I've run many 100-yard rushes too, and I probably would have. I should have let him know to make the settings a little faster.
This is incredible. It reminds me of the Tour de France when they used to like drink bottles of wine for lunch. And nowadays, they're thrashing each other in the peloton. Adumbi is in the lead though, with Vitor cruising up around the middle of the pack.
Dub's win is making a little push here. It looks like.
Go,
Here
Brad,
comes
go.
Brad Bolt at the bottom.
Go.
Oh, Dub's
Bolt.
win takes the lead.
Come on, Matt.
Come on, Brad. Brad's the
This is
Brad's
going
the host
back
of our
and forth.
NFL show. Brad and Daniel from Australia.
way.
Yes, he's my good friend.
Dubs
Win is gonna take it.
I think he's
Dubs Win took
Oh,
it.
he's slowing down. Oh, he gets it. There it is. Dubs win. So
Awesome. I know
Dubs-
Dubs was a part of our contest over at Optimus last week, so
Nice.
he didn't win it. So I'm glad to see him get it here. Awesome.
Dubs.
if you can throw your Twitter handle in the chat, if you're still here, he was as of 3 minutes ago. Otherwise, if you're listening to the podcast and later on, if you can just reach out to us at Dynasty Junkies, so that we can make sure you get in there. But yeah, we'll get it's like I said, we're gonna need your Twitter handle to pass along to Scott so that he can search you up. So one way or the other, we need that. So, but I think we did kind of do a find me trade, but I think we're gonna hold off on that. I think we're at a good spot to kind of close things out here now. Tommy, you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, like a nice little hour show. We can keep it to an hour instead of going like 90 minutes or whatever we usually do. So, Tommy, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. Oh, there's Dubs. He said he just cheered in the chat. So, Dubs, like I said, if you can throw your Twitter handle in there or just DM us at Dynasty Junkies. There you go. He did. Okay.
Yeah, man.
So, Tommy, thank you for hosting with me tonight. Nate, want to thank you for coming on and answering all these questions with us. It's been a fun time. Why don't you remind everybody again all your information before we sign off here?
Most importantly, find me on Twitter at Nate Polvogt, NatePolvogt, and then at Optimus Fantasy. And check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/@OptimusFantasyFootball. Guys, thanks for having me. Rocky, we can't wait another 3 years before you have me back on, man.
I know. I got to get you on sooner. That's my bad. I've gotten, when I first started, the ASL on the shows, I was going nuts. I was getting like tons of people on the show, all kinds of names, big names, small names, every name. And now I just don't do anything. I let Andrew handle all that. So,
well, I remember when you had James Rode on. That was awesome.
I couldn't believe we pulled that one. Yeah, that was yeah. I just basically got into it. I think his DMs were open or something. Or no, I was in an SFB chat or something.
Chat
he followed
with him,
me.
That's right.
Yeah, and he followed me, and I was like, okay, this is my chance. I'm a huge Psych fan, so that was like
me too.
It was like a great moment for me in podcasting. But I hope other people liked listening to it. But I don't care if they did or not. I just enjoyed it myself. But again, thanks for coming on tonight, Nate. I want to thank everybody who was in the chat asking the different questions. Sorry we couldn't give a spot to all of you, but congrats to Dubs. And I want to just shout out a whole bunch of other people that were in the chat. A lot of them, I have said their names, but I'm just going to do it. And a couple I haven't. Toronto Dave was in there. Love Toronto Dave. Didn't ask a question, but he was in the chat. Jay, Dubs Win, of course. Vitor Soma, Jeff Sutrick, Puff Pass Kick, Dumley, San Fran Psych, and anybody I forgot, I'm sorry. But I just thank you all for watching tonight. Lindsay Kennedy, who's in the Fantasy Timeline Listener League with me, was also here. Appreciate all of you. Appreciate you coming out and giving us some questions. And hopefully, if this was your first time because of the SFB spot, hopefully you give us a chance to listen a little more. We try and put on a great show for y'all here. I hope you enjoyed it tonight. You can follow us at Dynasty Junkies. You can follow the DAP Network and give us a rating and review and all that good stuff. I feel like I'm just rambling at this point. So I'm just going to finish this up and say Junkies out.